Today, my guest is Rod Khlief. Rod is an experienced real estate investor who's owned hundreds of single-family units and multifamily units. He's also the author, or he is an author, and also the host of the popular podcast, Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. He's also a mentor and a coach, and he hosts multiple multifamily boot camps throughout the year, throughout the U.S. And in just a minute, we're going to speak with Rod about the power of multifamily real estate and the importance of mindset. But first, a quick reminder, if you like the show, CREPN Radio, please let us know. You can like, you can share, you can subscribe. And always, please leave a comment. We'd love to hear from our listeners. Also, if you want to see how handsome our guests are, be sure to check out our YouTube channel, and that's Commercial Real Estate Pro Network. With that, I want to welcome my guest. Rod, welcome to CREPN Radio.
Darren, let's have some fun. I appreciate you having me on, and I'm looking forward to doing anything I can to add value to your listeners, my friend.
Well, I cannot tell you how pleased I am to have the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm looking forward to our conversation. But before we get started, if you could share with the listeners a little bit about your background.
Sure, happy to. And I like to go back because it's relative in that I'm an immigrant. I immigrated from Holland when I was 6 years old with my mother's Vansha and my brother Albert. We ended up in Denver, Colorado, where I lived the next 30 years. And we didn't have much. I wore clothes from the Goodwill and the Salvation Army all the way through junior high school until I could get a job and get my own clothes. And we ate expired food and drank powdered milk because my mom thought milk was healthy at the time. And, we didn't have much. And I'm sure you've probably got listeners that are like, oh, wow, big deal. I've had it a lot harder than you did. And I respect that. But the reason I bring it up is because I knew I wanted more than that. And my mom, bless her heart, had an incredible work ethic. And she would babysit kids, a lot of kids. She had this babysitting operation going on in the house. And what's amazing is with her babysitting money, she bought the house across the street from us when I was about 14 for approximately $30,000. Just a couple years later, 3 years later, when I was 17, she told me it had gone up $20,000 in her sleep right before I was about to graduate from high school. And I'm like, what? I'm getting into real estate. I'm going to be a real estate mogul. Real estate's for me. So I got my real estate broker's license, which you could do back then right after I turned 18. You could do it with education. They got smart. Now they have an experience requirement, right? I got my broker's license right after I turned 18, and I was going to be rich in real estate. So my first year, I maybe made $8,000, 8 or 9. My second year, maybe 10 to 11. My third year, though, I made over $100,000, which back in 1981 was a decent amount of money. And so what happened between year 2 and 3? And that's a topic that I talk about every week on my podcast. I talk about it at my live events. What happened was I met a guy that taught me the importance of mindset and psychology, and that truly 80 to 90% of your success in anything, including real estate or entrepreneurship or investing or whatever it is mindset. And only 10 to 20% is the mechanical information. And so fast forward to today, I've owned over 2,000 single family houses that I've rented out, multiple apartment complexes. And in 2006, my net worth went up $17 million while I slept.
Wow.
And there's a punchline, when something like that happens, especially as young as I was, when something like that happens, some people have a tendency to get a big head. And that was me. I could barely fit my head through a door. I thought I was a real estate god. And when that happens, God or the universe or whatever you believe will give you a smackdown. Well, that was 2008. In 2008, I lost everything. I lost that 17 million and a whole lot more. I lost $50 million. And that's a real number. And I call it a seminar. I don't call it a failure because it's only a failure if you fail to learn, you don't pick yourself back up, if you give up at that point. But it was a big seminar, a painful seminar. And so one of the things I like to talk about, and you can tell me if you'd like me to expand on this, is how I was able to get to 50 million in the first place, the mindset that was required, but also the mindset it took to recover from losing that to the success that I enjoy today. Would you want me to drill down on that a little bit?
Please do. I think that is
Okay.
so just fundamental for
Awesome.
anybody to have success. So please
Awesome.
continue.
Okay. So I will tell you in a nutshell, and I'll drill. I'll get a little micro on this. But if you're listening, if you have a pen and paper and you have the ability, if you're not driving down the road, to take a couple notes, I think it'll be helpful. It's a really cool process. I do this, over an hour at my live events. We'll do it in about 3 or 4 minutes right now. But I'll give you the framework, and that is, pick an hour when you have a lot of energy. Don't do it right after a big meal. Make sure you're hydrated and make sure you're uninterrupted. And sit down and write down everything you could ever possibly want in life, okay? The big things and the little things. Now, I'm going to say this, Darren. Most people spend more time planning Christmas or a birthday party than they do designing their lives. This is designing your life. So take this seriously, my friends. So sit down and write down everything you could ever possibly want in life. The houses, the cars, the boats, the jet skis, the planes, all of the stuff, okay? And take the lid off your brain. You are only limited by your thoughts. So if you want a private island or a yacht or a jet, write it down. It's not outside the realm of reality. And I'll give you examples of that in a minute. But write everything down. If you're analytical, don't stop to analyze it. Don't let the pen leave the paper. Just keep writing. You can always scratch it out later. So keep writing. Write down how much money you want to make a month from your investments in 3 years. Maybe in 10 years, how much monthly net income you want. Write down how much money you want to have in the bank as a rainy day fund in a few years and in 10 years. Write down what you want to do as well. You want to climb a mountain, you want to write a book, you want to jump out of a perfectly good airplane like I did a couple months ago, screaming the whole way, then write it down. Write down what you want to learn in this lifetime. Me, I'm going to learn how to play the drums. My wife bought me a drum set. It's over in one of the other buildings in my compound, and it's kind of off to the side. I don't even know what end of the sticks to use yet, but I'm going to learn how to play those damn drums here soon because I love rhythm. I'm going to learn how to fly a helicopter. That's another thing. So what do you want to learn how to do? Write it down. Also, write down who you want to help. We are put on this earth to contribute beyond ourselves. Write down who you want to help. And for me, I bought my parents a house. Bought them a car, took them on cruises. Who do you want to help? Write it down. So it's everything you want to do, be, or have. It's not just the stuff. It's everything. Big, little, you name it. Keep writing till you can't think of another thing. Be excited about this. Keep your energy up when you're doing it. Once you can't think of another thing, it's not real and it's not a goal until it has a timeline. So I want you to put how many years it's going to take you to achieve each goal. And don't overanalyze this either. Just guess at it. Like 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, even 10 year, even 20 year. Recognizing that as human beings, we will overestimate what we can accomplish in a year and massively underestimate what we can do in a decade or 20 years. So keep that in mind. Put a number by each goal. All right, just a couple more steps, Darren. So tell me, I'm sorry. The next thing that you're going to do is you're going to pick your number one goal. Okay. I mean, that goal that if you got it, you'd be like, oh my God, that goal. Okay. And if you've got 2 or 3 that are equally exciting, just pick one because it's not going to matter for what we're doing next. But put that goal on a separate sheet of paper. Also, pick your top 3 one-year goals. Put them on a separate sheet of paper. Now, this is where most people stop. In fact, most people rarely even get this far. And so you're already ahead of 99.9% of the planet at this point. But you're going to take it a couple steps further because the goals are important. The goals will push you and pull you. But the real fuel is why those goals are an absolute must. So you're going to write underneath each one of those goals a paragraph why it's an absolute must for you to achieve it. And you're going to use emotionally charged words like incredible and amazing and massive and beautiful. And using words are very powerful. Use them. So you might say, so we can live the incredible life of our dreams. So I can show my children what success looks like. So I can show my spouse what success looks like. So we can go anywhere we want, whenever we want, wherever we want, bring whoever we want. Whatever it is for you, write it down. Now, I also, once you've got your positive reasons why it's an absolute must, not a should, for you to get these goals, I want you to put some pain in there. If you don't achieve them, put things like, so I don't feel like a failure. so I don't live a life of regret, so I don't fail my children, so I don't fail my spouse. And I know this sounds rough, but as human beings, we will do more to avoid pain than gain pleasure. Use this, my friends. It's fuel. It's going to get you off your butt, push you through your fear, through your limiting beliefs, get you out of comfort to grab the life you deserve. I mean, the comfort zone's a nice warm place, but nothing freaking grows there. So use this fuel. So put some pain in there. There's a nurse in Australia named Bronnie Ware, and she was a hospice nurse. And she asked hospice patients what their biggest regrets were as they were about to die. And she even wrote a book about it. It's called The 5 Regrets of Dying. And you want to know what the number one regret was, Darren? It was living someone else's life, not living to my potential. Guys, we do not want any regrets. So this is how you avoid them, by using pain and pleasure to propel you. All right, the last thing I want to share is that it's critical for you to get pictures of your goals. Now, I want to give you some examples of this because they're really powerful. One is Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey, when he was flat broke, he had a checking account, and he wrote himself one of his own checks for $10 million. And he put on the 4-line for services rendered, put a little happy face. And he used to go up to the Hollywood sign, flat broke. He'd pull this check out and he would visualize cashing it. And that's how much money he made for Dumb and Dumber. So guys, those of you that are analytical that are going, oh my God, he's gone off the foofy deep end right now, I'm here to tell you that would be a big mistake. Now, I'm going to give you some of my own personal examples as well. Back when I turned 18, I figured because I was a real estate broker and I'm going to sell people houses, I had to have a 4-door car. And I bought this bone freaking ugly 4-door Granada, ugliest thing you've ever seen. Bench seats. But I had a friend that I worked with who had a Corvette. He actually had 2 Corvettes, but he let me drive one of them. And that's an important piece, that experiential piece. If there's something you want, go test drive it, or go to the open house for the house of the caliber you want, or, get around, immerse yourself and experience as close to it as you can, because that helps in this process. But I actually drove this guy's Vet, loved it. I thought it was just freaking amazing. So I went in a magazine. I mean, this is before you could spell internet. And I went in a magazine, got a picture of a Corvette, and I put it on the visor of my 4-door Granada. So when I sat in the seat, it was right there in my face, the picture of this Corvette. Within a year or two, I had a beautiful red Corvette. I'm going to give you a couple other examples, but let me pre-frame these examples by saying this is not me bragging, because these things don't even interest me anymore. Okay, but they are great for illustrative purposes, and hopefully they'll inspire some of you listening. So this is back when I had this Corvette, was the time the TV show Magnum PI was on. It was Tom Selleck was the actor, a good-looking guy, but he drove this red Ferrari 308. And I thought it was the coolest. This was really the first time I'd ever seen an exotic car. And I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. So I got a picture of that actual car out of a magazine, and I taped it to the visor of my Corvette. Within a year or two, I had a Maserati look just like it. Last car example, just because I love cars, is I'm the guy that always wanted a Lamborghini, okay? I had the pictures of the Lamborghini Countach. Mike Tyson, he was married to his wife for about a week, and they had matching Lamborghinis, and I had the posters in my bedroom with the bikinis and all of that, yeah. But what's funny is my son collected models of exotic cars, and he was 9 years old, and he had about, 30 or 40 of these models, and he had a model of the exact same color and style Lamborghini that I ended up with. Which I wrecked, but anyway, so pictures work, my friends. And the last example I want to, in fact, let me show you something. Since we're, you have this on YouTube as well,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
Okay. So this is my planner. Okay, I use a paper planner. I'm a freaking dinosaur. I use Outlook too, but I love my paper planner. Well, this used to be Daytimer. Now it's Franklin Covey. In the back of this thing, I've got pictures that have been in here for literally 20 years. Now, the first pictures are pictures of my children when they were very young. They're my gratitude pictures. Guys, everything starts from a foundation of gratitude. Like, I've got vision boards now for the things that are important to me now, but I have a vision board just for gratitude. So I got pictures of my kids. Now, you see how dog-eared these are. They've been in here for literally 20 years. Then I've got pictures of the things that I wanted. I built this house back 20 years ago on an island. It was an $8 million, 10,000 square foot house magnificent, magnificent home. With the beach on one side and boathouses on the back side. And what's crazy is this picture on the top looks just like the view from that house. I lost that house when I lost everything else. And now I live in a compound, which is spectacular in its own right. I've got 6 buildings and a guest house with exercise facility. I've got a conference center. I mean, it's a magnificent compound. And what's crazy is it looks like these bottom pictures. It's just insane. So this stuff works, guys. And I've got, stupid shit that I thought was important, like watches. I've got a few $100,000 worth of watches. The Lamborghini before I ever got it. There's pictures of it. The Rolls Royce. All this stuff that I got because I had pictures. So again, those of you analytical ones thinking this doesn't work, I'm here to tell you it absolutely does. So get pictures of the things that are important to you. Get them around you. Put them on screensavers. Put them on your phone. Put them on your wall. If you looked around my office here now, you'd see pictures of the things that matter to me now. So there you have it.
That's your recipe there. I like it.
That's it. It works. It works because you got to push through those limiting beliefs, Darren. So
I think the 2 things that I identify with mostly in that is if you know your why, and then also the power of visualization.
Sure.
I forget, is it Hal Elrod's?
Hal Elrod, yeah, absolutely. Wrote a book called The Miracle Morning. I've given away hundreds of copies to my students, and part of that process is visualizing. I do a little morning ritual. Let me just share it. It'll take 1 minute.
Yeah.
Every morning, I sit and do gratitude. I'll just sit in a recliner behind me, or I'll sit, I'll just lay in bed and do this, and I'll be grateful for my beautiful bride, my children, my foundation, my coaching students. I'll just do gratitude. But then I do gratitude for the things that I want as if I already have them. You call it prayer, call it whatever you want. But I'll sometimes even get emotional with gratitude for something I don't even have yet. Okay. And I know I probably lost a few of the analytical ones, but I'm here to tell you it would be a mistake because this stuff works, my friends. Be it God, the universe, whatever you believe, when you're grateful for something as if you have it, it comes into your life. Your brain, what all this does is it triggers something in your brain called your reticular activating system. And it's that filter in your brain that filters out what it thinks is most important to you. Like a great example of this would be if you buy a car, you never really notice them, and then you see them everywhere. Were they there before? Sure. Yep. But your brain now notices what's important. It thinks is important to you. By writing your goals down, knowing your whys, visualizing them, it triggers your reticular activating system to hone in on things that will get you towards them. So.
No, I have a morning routine, and I think the one thing that I've struggled with most to incorporate is that visualization. And I recognize the power of it. It's
hard. It takes some work. It takes some focus. But let me say this: just get pictures. I've got posters on the wall around me here of the things that I want now, and I forget they're there, but they're in my subconscious. Okay, and on my screensaver, and then I've got little sayings on the wall, to help push me and propel me as well. And, all of these little things add up. And as far as the visualization, you don't have to overthink it. Just be grateful. Just be grateful. Gratitude is so powerful. And just be grateful for something that you want as if you have it. Thank you, God. Thank you, the universe, whatever it is for you. And I'm telling you, it'll happen.
No, I think, you don't have to look too far. You talk to or listen to professional athletes talk about the big moment and how they made the big shot or whatever it was, and how much in their mind they've seen this moment.
They visualize the race. They're trained. By the way, I'm really glad you said that. Olympic athletes are trained to visualize their race, every piece of the race before they do it, because of the power of it. Okay. Right. In fact, the Russians started it, and now every Olympic athlete and every professional athlete visualizes winning. They visualize getting the award, but they also visualize the actual race itself. I'm really glad you brought that up, Darren.
Yeah, because I think otherwise it feels like it's kind of more luck as opposed to. I mean, there is some sort of you're setting yourself up mentally. You're preparing yourself mentally for that, and so that you're. It's and I think also that by doing so, the wheels in motion towards that, you know?
Let me say this, the brain is so incredibly powerful. They've hooked athletes up to monitors on their muscles. And when they think through a race, the muscles fire off as if they're actually running the race. Okay, it's incredibly powerful. So, they're actually practicing without practicing. And no, normal standard operating procedure for top-notch world-class athletes now.
Yeah, and I think probably the place that I've had to kind of start and really kind of focus is trying to eliminate the noise. I mean, there's so much noise out there that it tries to get your attention, kind of thing. And if you let that in, then it will
Oh,
just
sure.
basically keep you distracted, kind of thing.
Social media, advertising,
Yep.
God help us from, CNN and Fox and, all of that. And so you really have to stand guard at the door to your mind, Darren. I mean, you
Right.
have to decide what you're going to let in. And there's so much quality content out there. On my podcast, I do a little episode called Own Your Power. And I do motivational clips every week. They're 5 minutes. Doesn't matter if you don't like real estate, whatever it is, they'll motivate someone in any field. And I'm real proud of them. And I hope you'll check them out. And then I do an interview with an expert as well. But there's so much quality content out there on YouTube and other podcasts that are good. They're wholesome. They're motivating. They're inspiring, that you don't need to take in the news is all negative crap, which is how they sell.
Yep. No, it's kind of the car wreck. Try and get everybody to pay attention, kind of thing.
Right.
Hey, Rod, before we go to my signature question, if you will, just based on the fact that you've been in real estate. I mean, we talked about how you got in. Your mother made an impression on you based on the increase in values early on. You got in, you had success. We know that you acquired a portfolio of single families.
And some multi.
Right. But I'd love to hear just if you could talk about the power of the multifamily in comparison to the
Sure.
single family.
Sure. And that's why I started my podcast, was just to give that message, because the reason my single family didn't make it is it was logistically unmanageable. I had houses 2 hours north and 2 hours south and everywhere in between, and some apartment complexes. But I had 800 houses in 2007 and 8, 800 houses, and I had several apartment complexes. And what I discovered through the crash was my houses pulled me down, but my apartments, they would have survived just fine if I hadn't cross-collateralized them with packages of houses. Now, the reason that my houses didn't work was if I sent them, well, first of all, Florida has high property taxes, compared to like Colorado and Tennessee, where I had other properties previously. And then I had properties in flood zones or wind zones that all of this, which impacts cash flow. But the big one was the logistics. If I'd send a guy to one of my maintenance guy to one of my apartment complexes to fix something, everything's the same. So you could stockpile the plumbing guts, the hardware, you could stockpile parts. And I could send him, he'd be in and out in an hour. But if I just send someone an hour north of here or an hour south of here, to a house, everything's different. So they'd have to go assess it. Number one, they absolutely couldn't stockpile parts to speak of, just hardly anything. And so then they'd have to go find a Home Depot or a Lowe's. So that could be an hour round trip or longer. And then, you get into something, you realize you're missing something. You got to go back to the hardware supply. And before you know it, the whole day's gone, versus an apartment where it's just an hour, and you multiply that times 800. It just, it was the perfect storm. That, coupled with the fact that most of my residents were jobbers, contractors, plumbers, electricians, drywallers, things of that nature, which, as we all know, that all construction, remodel and construction, new construction, fall off a cliff in 08 and 09. So that's why, people ask why did it happen. But the reason I like multifamily, again, and the reason I started my podcast, is if you're going to buy and hold, for God's sakes, do multifamily. Even if it's just a duplex, triplex, fourplex, you're so much safer, number one. You get more scale, number two. It's much easier to go bigger, faster. I'm master of systems, and I bought 200 houses in 1 year in Memphis, biggest mistake of my life, as an aside. But the point is, I've got that single family thing down, and I don't recommend it at all. I won't buy another house unless I'm living in it. So it's silly. And just the ability to scale, the ability to weather a contraction. And frankly, they're easier to buy because it's a team sport. You can bring in a partner that's got the liquidity, the net worth, and the experience component, and you don't even have to bring any money. You can find somebody to put up the at-risk capital for the multifamily. You carve up the deal a little bit, and you orchestrate it, and you can get into real estate. It's just, and once you do your first one, you're like, oh my God, is that all it was? It was, but the first one's the hardest, obviously. It's the most stressful, takes the longest, but then they're like dominoes. I see it time and time again with my students. They buy that first one and then the floodgates open. It's a beautiful thing to see, but once you realize how easy it really is. But I do those 3-day live events. If you've got a listener that's interested, I hope you'll check me out and come to one of my boot camps. It's just me training for 3 days. I don't have a bunch of speakers coming in to sell you stuff. It's just me, and it's drinking through a fire hose. But I also incorporate a lot of the psychology pieces as well: the goal setting, pushing through fear, discovering your true identity and utilizing that to propel yourself forward, and on and on. And people really rave about the events. So.
No, I appreciate you taking us through that, because I think that, I know for myself, we've got some properties, and I just for the longest time just did not believe we could buy a multifamily. I just thought, it was like, well, single families, I understood that. We bought
It's
those.
intimidating. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was kind of a known entity. I knew what a house looked like. I knew what the lending requirements were. And just the scale thing. I was afraid of the size of the loan, and I thought the down payment and all that kind of stuff. I didn't realize how they look at or a lender looks at a property as a business, as opposed to they look at you when you're buying it
personally, right? They don't look at you personally as much. They look at the team, and they look at the property's ability to service the debt. And
right.
yeah,
Right.
and that was my problem. I was so comfortable with single family. It was so easy. I could do it in my sleep that I didn't really push the multifamily harder than I did. And to my mistake, but I mean, listen, I'm back. We bought 1,000 doors in the last 6 months, and things are humming and loving life, and and I've got over 200 students that are taking massive action. It just it's a beautiful. I mean, I'm loving life. I get a thank you card almost every day from somebody whose life's been impacted, and it's just the greatest gift in the world. As I'm sure you get a lot of kudos for your podcast as well. It just feels good to add value.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, Rod, if you're up to it, I'd like to just take a minute and shift gears here.
Sure.
By day, I'm an insurance broker and work with clients to assess risk and determine what to do with the risk. And there's 3 strategies we typically consider. One is avoid the risk. 2 is minimize the risk. And then the third option is transfer the risk, which is what an insurance policy is.
Right.
And as of late, I've been asking all my guests if they could, take a look and see what they believe is the biggest risk. And so I'd like to ask you, Rod Khlief, what is the biggest risk
In my life? I will tell you my biggest risk as I see it, and I thought about this before we started this podcast, is we are right now in a stage of the market called irrational exuberance. And I just told you, I've got, I don't know, probably 220, 230 coaching students. And my biggest risk is communicating to them they damn well better not buy a property without running it through our system first and making sure that it's been stress tested and they're not taking people's money. And so that's my biggest, and I talk to my team about all the time, because we walk our students through their deals. We evaluate them, we respond and tell them, what rocks to look under and questions to ask. And some of them, some people think they can do it without any help. And there's some mistakes being made right now. There's deals, that we bid on and we find out what they traded for, and I'm scratching my head thinking, how did they make those numbers work? It's just astounding to me that they were able to get financing as well. And it's just reminiscent of 2006 and 7 to me. And so I think that's my biggest risk, is just protecting my students and making sure that those mistakes are eliminated or mitigated. Because again, what I went through, it's really top of mind for me. But we do a pretty darn good job. So, but it's just that communication and making sure that they're asking for help.
I love the answers I get, and clearly that one is one I think that everybody should be hyper aware of right now. I mean, the old saying of history repeats itself, and you look at where we are in the cycle, and it's hard to argue that if you don't do all your testing and underwriting like you're talking about, you could be in a world of hurt here.
Yeah,
Uh,
we'll be buying your property. We'll
yeah,
be buying your property in a couple
for
of
cheap.
years.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
from
got
the
you got to have
bank.
you got to make sure you have an operating reserve, for a
Yeah.
rainy day, and you got to make sure you stress test. What happens if you're 25% vacant? Can you still cover and that's one of our basic parameters. 25% vacant, it better cash flow day one, or we won't do it. So we've done deals at 65% loan to value to make the numbers work and still have great returns, but we're very, very conservative. We've got one property in Louisiana. We've got $1 million in the bank as a rainy day fund. So, I mean, that's like overkill, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. I told you my history. So
No, I love the voice of experience.
the
Nothing
voice
like
of
it.
painful experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have
Seminars.
a T-shirt. I have a T-shirt one of my students gave me because at my live events I say, "Ask me how I know," because I'll talk about something horrific and I'll like, "Ask me how I know," because I lived through it. And so,
Right.
yeah. So anyway, some kid,
That's awesome.
one of my students gave me a T-shirt with that on it.
Hey, Rod, before we close here, where can the listeners go if they'd like to learn more
Sure.
or
Sure.
connect?
Now, a couple things. One is certainly my podcast. If you put in real estate on iTunes, I'll come up number one or two every time. We just exceeded 6.5 million downloads. So, it's pretty well received. It's a passion project for me. And so there, but also my website, rodkhleif.com, Khleif as in Frank.com. I've got tons of free content, free videos and articles. I mean, literally hundreds, and it's all free training stuff and motivational stuff. And I've got a workbook, a multifamily workbook on there that's, I don't know, probably 30, 40 pages. It's also doubles as a due diligence checklist. And it's probably the most comprehensive due diligence list of questions and thoughts I've ever seen. So, and it's free. So the price is good. But the other thing is, you are the 5 people you hang around with. And I've got the largest multifamily Facebook group for really on the planet. There's almost 30,000 people on there. And so get in there. It's multifamilycommunity.com. There's a direct link to that Facebook group, because you want to be around people that are going to lift you up and push you and, hold you to a higher standard. That rising tide lifts all ships. So if you got people that are fearful of your investment dreams, fearful of your goals, love them, but don't let them influence you, and get around people that want more out of life. And if you can come see me live, rodsbootcamp.com, you'll love it. People rave about the events. We have a lot of fun. People laugh, they cry. I mean, it's not like your typical real estate seminar. It's a lot of inspirational content. Yes, it's drinking through a fire hose. On Saturday night, I'll have $1 billion to $2 billion represented by the panelists on stage that do a Q&A well into the evening. We get a cash bar in the room, and by 9 o'clock, it's chaos, but we have a lot of fun. So come see me if you can at one of my live events. And thanks for having me on the show, brother. It was a lot of fun.
No, Rod, I can't say thanks enough. I've enjoyed the chance to talk with you and learned a lot, and I hope we can do it again soon.
Thanks, brother. Take care, my friend.
All right. For our listeners, if you like this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And also don't forget to check out Rod's website and his podcast. And I'm telling you, he brings the knowledge and the enthusiasm, and you will thoroughly enjoy it, I promise. Remember, the more you know, the more you grow. That's all we've got this week. Until next time, thanks for listening to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CREPN Radio.